My name is Daniel Marsh. I'm 34 years old, and I've lived in Clarksville, Georgia my whole life except for the 4 years I went to college in Athens and came back anyway. I teach woodshop at Clarksville High School. I have 32 students this semester and a room that smells permanently of pine shavings and polyurethane, which I consider a reasonable trade for getting to show a 16-year-old that they can build something with their hands that will outlast them. On weekends, I restore old furniture out of my garage. Estate sale chairs, cracked tabletops, dressers with missing pulls. I put them back together and sell them to people who want something with a little history in it. It was not the life I had planned at 34. 3 years ago, I was engaged. Her name was Liz, and she was smart and funny and had very specific ideas about the future that evolved, over 4 years together, into very specific ideas about a different future. She wanted Atlanta. She wanted a career that matched her ambition. She wanted, it turned out, a different kind of man than the one who was happy teaching teenagers to use a jointer and eating dinner at the same diner every Friday. She left on a Sunday. She was kind about it, which somehow made it harder. I spent 6 months being angry, then 6 months being numb. Then I went back to work, and the work was steady, and eventually the days stopped feeling like something I was just getting through. But I hadn't asked anyone out in 3 years. I hadn't let anyone close enough to ask. I told myself I was busy. I told myself I'd get around to it. I told myself the right situation would present itself when it was supposed to. I never expected the situation to be a woman on my doorstep with a sleeping child on her shoulder and a folder of legal documents in her hand. June Hartley had moved into the house across the street 8 months before that Wednesday. I knew her the way you know your neighbors when you're both quiet people with full schedules, well enough to wave, to help drag her garbage cans to the curb once when her arms were full, to learn that she worked at the county library and that she was raising her niece Maisie while her sister recovered from something June never named out loud. She was careful about what she said. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for anything. Until she did. It was cold enough that I could see her breath when she spoke. She knocked twice, quickly, the way people knock when they're not sure they should be knocking at all. I opened the door and found her with Maisie asleep against her left shoulder, the girl's head tucked in, her small hand fisted in the collar of June's coat. June was holding a manila folder in her right hand and looking at me with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Not composed, not careful. Desperate was the word for it, the kind that's been held back a long time. "I'm sorry to come over so late," she said. She fell asleep on the drive home and I didn't want to wake her. She shifted Maisie slightly. "Can I come in for just a minute?" I stepped back. She came in and settled Maisie on the couch with a blanket from her own coat pocket she'd brought it, prepared, the way she always seemed to be prepared for whatever the day required of her. She turned to face me. She set the folder open on my kitchen table. At the top was a form with the Clarksville County Department of Family and Children's Services letterhead. "I'm going to explain this as clearly as I can," she said. "And then you can say no, and I'll understand, and we'll never have to talk about it again." I sat down across from her. She didn't sit. Maisie's placement review is in 18 days. It's a home study. A caseworker comes to the house, evaluates the living environment, the stability of the household, whether the placement continues to serve the child's best interest. She said it flat and even, the way someone says something they've had to repeat until the words stopped hurting. My placement has been classified as borderline stable for the last 2 reviews. The caseworker's notes say single-parent status is a flag. A flag. They're not required to remove a child from a single guardian. But in borderline cases, it tips the scale. She pressed on. "My sister is 60 days into a 90-day program. She's doing well, but she can't be Maisie's guardian right now, and if Maisie goes into county placement," she stopped. Pressed her lips together once. "She's 7. She's been through enough. I'm not letting that happen." I looked at the form. Near the bottom, under household composition, there was a line for spouse/partner name. "The home study assesses 2-parent stability," June said. "Not because the regulations require it, but because the caseworker assigned to our case has flagged every single review around that line. If I come to this study with someone who can speak to the home environment, who can be present for the walkthrough. She stopped. I just need someone to sign as my husband, she said. The room was quiet. Maisie breathed softly from the couch. June looked at me with those careful, tired eyes. I know this is an enormous thing to ask. I know we're not close. I know it's... She pressed her hand flat against the folder. There's no one else I trust enough. And I trust you enough. I don't know exactly why. I just do. I looked at her for a moment. Then I looked at Maisie on the couch. Her shoes were still on. One of them was untied. She had a smudge of what looked like marker on her left wrist. She was sleeping the way small children sleep, completely, without any of the defenses adults learn to use even in sleep. She's been through enough, June said. I believed her. I looked back at June. Sign me up for real, I said. She blinked. I'm sorry? I mean, yes, I held up a hand. I mean, yes. Whatever you need. She looked at me for a long moment, like she was waiting for the catch. There wasn't one. There's paperwork, she said finally. Okay, we'd have to be consistent. The caseworker may ask questions separately. I understand. You'd have to come to the home study. Be present. Speak to the household, the routines. I know what a home study is. She almost smiled. Just the edge of one. Why do you know what a home study is? I looked it up, I said. 3 months ago, when I saw you carrying those DFC's folders across the street. She went still. I wasn't trying to get into your business, I said. I just wanted to understand what you were dealing with, in case I could help somehow. I shrugged. I didn't know how to offer. June looked at me for a long moment. Then she looked toward the window, and I saw something shift in her, some small piece of the wall she'd built coming loose. There's something I haven't told anyone, she said. Her voice was careful, quiet, about the situation with Maisie, about why I'm the one doing this. She reached into the folder and then seemed to change her mind. She closed it. I'll tell you, she said. But not tonight. Tonight I just needed the yes. I nodded. She picked up her folder and went to the couch. She gathered Maisie without waking her, the practiced lift of someone who has carried this child hundreds of times, and walked to the door. She looked back once. Thank you, Daniel. The way she said it. Not relieved. Not grateful exactly, but like someone who had been holding something heavy for a very long time and had just been offered somewhere to set it down. That was the moment I understood I hadn't just agreed to a legal favor. I'd agreed to something I didn't fully understand yet. We started with logistics. She came over the following evening with a notebook and a printed list of questions a home study caseworker typically asks. She'd found the list on a foster parent forum. We went through them at my kitchen table while Maisie colored on the floor with markers June had packed in a small bag, quietly, efficiently, like someone who had learned not to leave things to chance. How long have you been together? 18 months. How did you meet? At the library. She'd recommended a book I was too stubborn to admit I ended up loving. Who does the cooking? We split it. She's better at it. Who handles the finances? Together, he's better at the long-term planning. I watched her write these answers in her careful librarian's handwriting and thought about how completely deliberate she was. Not cold, but in the way of someone who has learned that preparation is a form of self-protection. That if you think through every scenario, fewer of them can blindside you. You're good at this, I said. She looked up. At what? Organizing a story. It's not a story, she said. It's a version of things that protects Maisie. I know. I just meant. You've thought through every angle. I've thought through every angle of everything for 8 months, she said. It's not a skill. It's a habit I developed to keep from falling apart. She said it the way you state the temperature outside. I looked at her for a moment and didn't say anything. Maisie looked up from her drawing. Daniel, she said, with the directness of a 7-year-old who has decided you're worth addressing. Do you have a dog? I don't. You should get one. Maisie, June said. I'm just saying. She went back to her drawing. June caught my eye across the table, and for half a second something in her expression loosened. Not quite a smile, but close. That was the first small thing. Over the next 2 weeks, I came over to June's house more than I technically needed to. I told myself it was for consistency. We should be comfortable in the same space, should know where things were, how the house ran. I helped her install a new curtain rod in the hallway that had been sitting in a box for 3 weeks. I tightened a doorknob on Maisie's bedroom that had been rattling. I fixed the kitchen drawer that stuck. Maisie supervised every project with the seriousness of a building inspector. That's still a little crooked, she said about the curtain rod. It's within tolerances, I said. She looked at June. What does that mean? It means he's not going to fix it, June said. I'm going to fix it. I'm doing it in the next 10 minutes instead of right now. Maisie considered this. Okay, she wandered off. June handed me the level she'd retrieved from the hall closet without me asking. Our hands were close for just a second. Close enough that I noticed. I fixed the curtain rod. She made coffee afterward, and we sat in her kitchen while Maisie watched something in her room, and we talked about things not on the home study list. She told me about growing up in Clarksville, about library school at Georgia Southern, about coming back because this was where her family was, and she had never been the kind of person who could leave easily. I told her about my woodshop, about the students who surprised me, about a chair I was currently restoring that had been in the same family for 4 generations and was missing one leg. How do you match the wood? She asked. You don't, exactly. You find something close and let it age. I looked at my coffee. Most people can't tell unless they're looking for it. She looked at me. What happens when someone is looking for it? Then you're honest about it. You say this piece was missing and this is the closest we could get. Most people appreciate that more than pretending it was always whole. She was quiet for a second. I think about that with Maisie sometimes, she said. Whether I'm trying to make things look whole when they're not. What do you think? I think she's not confused about what happened. Her mom is sick and getting help, and she's staying with me. She knows that. She turned her coffee cup in her hands. What I'm trying to do isn't make it look whole. I'm trying to make sure the missing piece has time to come back. I looked at her across the kitchen table. That's not the same thing at all, I said. She nodded slowly. No, it's not. That night I drove home across the street and sat in my garage a while, looking at the chair with the missing leg. The replaced piece, once it aged, would end up being the strongest part of the whole thing. One Saturday morning I picked Maisie up from school, so June could make it to a meeting at the county office that ran over. We went to the hardware store because I needed sandpaper and Maisie wanted to look at the paint swatches, which she did with considerable seriousness for about 15 minutes before deciding that dusty sage was the color her room should be. Do you think Aunt June would let me paint my room? She asked. I think you could ask her. What if she says no? Then you make a very persuasive argument for dusty sage. She pulled the swatch off the rack and held it up to the light. I think it looks like morning, she said. I looked at it. She was right. Back at June's house, Maisie ran in to show her. I stood in the doorway and watched June crouch down to see it, turning it in the afternoon light, her face serious and then soft with the effort of not smiling too quickly. It does look like morning, she said. Maisie beamed. June looked up over Maisie's head and caught my eye, and there was something in her expression I didn't have a word for yet. Gratitude wasn't quite it. Recognition was closer. One evening on the front porch, tea for her, last of a water bottle for me. Neighborhood very quiet. She asked me something I hadn't expected. Why did you leave the folder open, she said. I looked at her. That first night. You saw the form on top, but you said yes before I finished explaining. She looked out at the yard. Why? I thought about the careful version of the answer. Because I saw Maisie asleep on your shoulder, I said. And I saw your face. And I understood that you were the kind of person who doesn't ask for anything until there's no other option. I paused. That told me everything I needed to know. She was quiet for a long moment. There's something I should tell you, she said. Something I promised I would, and kept putting off. She looked toward the house. The closed door, the lighted hallway. Not tonight, she said quietly. But soon. The moment sat between us, warm and a little weighted, like something we were both standing near without crossing. Then her phone rang, a work call, and the moment folded back into the ordinary, the way moments do. I drove home. I thought about her for a long time before I fell asleep. The home study was 10 days away when her father came to the library. She called me that evening and her voice was different. Quieter, the kind of quiet that comes after something has been said that can't be unsaid. He went to the child welfare office, she said, before coming to see me. Gerald Hartley. I'd met him once briefly when he'd stopped by with a casserole and a list of opinions about June's handling of the situation. He was the kind of man whose concern always came packaged as correction. What did he tell them? That I'm financially overextended. That I've been in denial about my sister's prognosis. Her voice was steady. That I'm too emotionally involved to make sound decisions for Maisie's well-being. I sat down. Is any of that documented? She was quiet for a second. Yes, she said. June, I've been paying for my sister's treatment, she said. 80% of it. The facility has a sliding scale, and I qualified to cover her costs. I've been doing it for 8 months. The number hit me before she said it. How much? She told me. The silence after that was heavy. My father found out 2 weeks ago. He has the bank statements. He's arguing that any guardian in that financial position cannot be assessed as stable. Her voice cracked once, then came back level. He thinks he's protecting me. He genuinely believes that if Maisie goes into a proper placement, I get my savings back, get my life back. Stop, she stopped. He doesn't understand that Maisie is my life right now. I stood up. I walked to the window. If the caseworker has his statement on file before the home study, it's now in 9 days. They moved it up. Her voice was very quiet. Expedited review because of the formal objection. Daniel, if this doesn't go well, they may remove her before my sister is even out of the program. Short sentences from here. Tell me what you need, I said. I need you to know the real picture before you walk into that house with me. I already said yes. You said yes before you knew all of it. June, I kept my voice even. I said yes before I knew any of it. The rest of it doesn't change the answer. She didn't respond right away. There's a box in my closet, she said finally. All the financial records, 8 months of payments, statements, correspondence with the facility. I've kept everything because I knew someday I might need to show it. We'll show it, I said. We build the case around it, not around hiding it. She was quiet again. You're not overextended, I said. You made a deliberate choice about your sister and you can document every dollar. That's not instability. That's what a stable person looks like when their family is in crisis. The line was silent for a long moment. I should have told you from the beginning, she said. You told me when you were ready. I was scared, she said, very quietly. I was scared you'd think I'd gotten myself into something too deep to get out of. Is that what you think? She didn't answer right away. No, she said finally, but I've been alone with this for a long time. I forgot what it felt like to have someone think it through with me. Gerald Hartley came to June's house on a Sunday afternoon. I was there. That wasn't planned, but I wasn't going to leave. He was tall, well-dressed, with the careful manner of someone who had spent decades being the most reasonable person in every room. He looked at me with polite suspicion when June introduced me, the look of a man who had been told there was a husband and was now updating his understanding of the situation. Daniel, he said. Measured handshake. Gerald, I said. He sat at June's kitchen table and spoke to her the way he'd probably spoken to her whole life, calmly, with the certainty of someone who believed he was the only adult in the conversation. I spoke to the child welfare office because I was worried, he said. I want you to understand that. I do understand that, June said. I also want you to understand what you've done to the timeline. The timeline was going to be a problem regardless. June, the financial situation, is documented, managed, and fully within my ability to sustain. For how long? His voice was patient. Infuriatingly patient. Your sister has been in crisis for 2 years. The 90-day program is the third facility in 18 months. If she doesn't, she's doing well. You said that last time. June's jaw tightened. She didn't answer. Gerald folded his hands on the table. I'm not the villain here. I raised both of you. I know what your sister's condition costs, in every way, and I know what it costs you to keep absorbing it. He looked at her with something that was genuine, I thought. Real worry underneath the certainty. I don't want you to spend everything you have trying to carry her and then have nothing left when she needs help again. She's not going to. You don't know that. The room was quiet. He turned to me. And what about you? June says you've been together a year and a half. You have a job, a house. Are you prepared to take this on? A child in a guardianship situation? A family financial strain? A crisis without a clean ending? I looked at him steadily. Yes, that's a quick answer. It's a clear question. He studied me. You're a woodshop teacher. I am. That's a modest income. It's a stable one. Gerald's expression was unreadable for a moment. Then he looked back at June. I went to the office because I was trying to protect you. I'll say that once more and then I won't say it again. He paused. I am aware that it has not felt like protection. June was very still. No, she said quietly. It didn't. He looked at his hands. His voice dropped. When your mother got sick, I made every practical decision correctly. I did everything the right way. And she still died in that hospital angry at me for not just sitting with her. He cleared his throat. I have spent a long time being the person who manages things correctly. He stopped. Something in the room shifted. I love Maisie, he said. I love your sister, despite everything. And I love you. He looked at June with an expression that was tired and old and had probably been building for years. I just don't know how to help without controlling the outcome. June looked at her father for a long moment. Then stop trying to control the outcome, she said gently. And just show up. Gerald was quiet. Then he looked at me again. Something in his face was recalibrating. The financial records, he said slowly. If you present them correctly, frame them as evidence of commitment rather than strain, the caseworker may interpret them favorably. He was problem-solving. He didn't know how to be anything else. But the problem he was solving had changed. That was my plan, June said. He nodded once. He looked at the table. I shouldn't have gone to the office without speaking to you first, he said. It came out carefully, like a man who doesn't apologize often but means it when he does. June reached across the table and put her hand over his for a moment. Call them, she said. Tomorrow, tell them your concerns have been addressed. He looked at her. I'll think about it, he said. Not a yes. But not what he'd walked in as, either. After he left, June and I sat in the kitchen for a while without talking. Maisie was in her room with music playing softly through the door. He's not wrong about everything, June said. No. My sister has relapsed before. I know. She looked at her hands. What if this is only ever a middle chapter? What if Maisie goes back to her mom, and then the situation happens again, and I'm right back at the beginning? I thought about the chair in my garage, the missing leg, the replaced piece. Then you're at the beginning with more experience, I said, and you don't do it alone. She looked up at me. Daniel, her voice was careful. What exactly are you offering? I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure I had the full words yet. I'm offering what I've been offering since that first night, I said. To be here. For whatever it requires. She held my gaze. The home study is in 4 days, she said. I know. We should go over the list again. We should. But neither of us moved to get the notebook. Gerald called the child welfare office on Monday. He didn't retract his objection. He amended it. He told the caseworker he had additional context about the household and would like his statement reconsidered. He sent a follow-up letter he didn't offer to share, which June found out about from the caseworker's assistant 2 days later. It wasn't a clean fix. Nothing about this had been clean. But it was something. The night before the home study, I sat in my garage until past midnight. Not working. Just sitting with the repaired chair, which was finished now, all 4 legs solid. The wood matched close enough that you'd have to be looking to see the seam. I thought about what June had asked me at the kitchen table. What exactly are you offering? I'd given her the honest answer. That I was offering presence. Commitment to the situation. But I hadn't said the rest of it. I hadn't said what I'd understood for 3 weeks, sitting across from her at that table, watching her make coffee, watching her crouch to look at a paint swatch with a 7-year-old, watching her carry all of this with a grace that cost her things she'd never asked anyone to reimburse. I drove across the street at 10:30. She was at the kitchen table. The box was open in front of her, bank statements and facility invoices arranged in 8 months of careful order, going through them one more time. She looked up when I knocked on the back door glass. She let me in without asking why I was there. I sat down across from her. I want to tell you something, I said. Before tomorrow. Not because it affects the home study or the paperwork. Because you should hear it from me before we walk into that room and say things about our household in front of a caseworker. She looked at me. I'm not here because you needed someone, I said. I mean, that's how I got here. But that's not why I stayed. She was very still. I stayed because every time I came across the street, I didn't want to leave. Because the evening I fixed the curtain rod and you handed me the level without me asking was one of the best evenings I've had in 3 years. Because Maisie told me I should get a dog and I've been thinking about it seriously ever since. I looked at my hands. Because you trust me enough to show me the box in the closet. And I don't take that lightly. She hadn't moved. I'm not asking you for anything right now, I said. I know everything is concentrated on tomorrow. I'm not asking you to figure anything out. I just wanted you to know that when I said yes that first night, I meant more than I knew. The kitchen was very quiet. Maisie's music had stopped in the other room. June looked at me for a long time. Then she looked down at the documents spread across the table. 8 months of payments. 8 months of choosing her sister and Maisie over every easier path. Do you know why I've never shown anyone these? She said quietly. Because you were afraid they'd use them to say you couldn't handle it. She nodded. But also, she stopped. Started again. Because I was afraid if someone saw everything I'd been doing, they'd feel sorry for me. And I didn't want to be someone people felt sorry for. She looked up. You don't, she said. Feel sorry for me. No, I said. I feel something else entirely. She held my gaze. Then she reached across the table and put the documents back in the box, 1 page at a time, carefully, in order. When she finished, she looked at me. Ask me again, she said, when this is over, when Maisie is secure and my sister is home, and the paperwork isn't on the table between us. Ask you what? She almost smiled. Just the edge of it, whatever you were building up to. I nodded slowly. Okay. She stood to make tea, and I stayed, and we talked about the home study until nearly midnight. Just the logistics. Just the list. But the air in the room was completely different from what it had been when I walked in. And we both knew it. The caseworker's name was Patricia Owens. She was thorough and unhurried and looked at the house and the documents and Maisie with the particular attention of someone who has seen a lot of households and knows within the first 10 minutes whether a child is safe and cared for. Maisie showed her the room. This is my color, Maisie said, pointing at the dusty sage wall I'd painted the previous Saturday. It looks like morning. Patricia looked at the wall. She wrote something in her notebook. We went through the financial documentation at the kitchen table. June had prepared a summary, not defensive, not apologetic, just clear. 8 months, each payment, each statement. Proof of commitment presented as exactly what it was. Patricia asked us questions separately, which we had prepared for. She asked me how long we had been together. I told her 18 months. She asked what our household looked like day to day. I described it the way it actually was by that point, not the constructed version we'd prepared, but the real one that had grown up around us without either of us planning it. She asked if I was prepared for the long-term nature of the placement. I told her yes. She asked why. I thought about the measured answer I had prepared. Then I thought about 10:30 at night and a kitchen table and a woman putting documents back in a box, carefully, one page at a time. Because the people in that house deserve to be together, I said. And because I want to be there. She wrote something down. At the end, she thanked us and said we would hear within 7 business days. We walked her to the door. June stood on the porch and watched the car pull out of the driveway, and when it was gone, her shoulders came down in a way I hadn't seen them come down in weeks. She stood there for a moment looking at the street. Then she turned to me. "I've been thinking about what you said," she said, "last night. Okay, about not being here because I needed someone." She looked at me steadily. "I've been trying to figure out how to say something back to that." "You don't have to say anything. I want to." She looked at the yard, the street, then back at me. "When I knocked on your door that night, I had rehearsed exactly what I was going to say. Every word. Because that's how I do things. I prepare so the situation can't blindside me." She paused. "I had not rehearsed what I was going to do if you said yes the way you said it." "How did I say it?" "Like it wasn't a question." Her voice was quiet, like you'd already decided. I looked at her. She looked back. "I just need someone to sign as my husband," she said, not asking this time. Remembering it. Turning it over. Saying it the way you say something that used to mean one thing and now means another. I held her gaze. "Sign me up for real." The words landed in the morning air between us, and this time neither of us let them go. June's eyes went bright. "Is that still the offer?" she asked. "That's been the offer since I said it," I said. "I just didn't have the full picture yet." She stepped forward. She took my hand. Not quickly. The way she did everything, deliberately, having decided. "Then I accept," she said. The home study came back favorable 7 days later. Patricia's report noted a stable 2-parent household, strong emotional attunement between the guardian and the child, and thorough financial documentation consistent with a committed and capable caregiver. Gerald called June the afternoon the decision came through. It was a short call. She told me about it that evening. He said, "I'm glad she's staying with you." She said, "Thank you for the letter." They didn't say more than that. But they were back on speaking terms, which was more than they'd been a month ago. My sister came home from the treatment program in February. She was thin and careful and didn't know how to look at Maisie at first. The way you look at someone you love when you've cost them something. Maisie solved that problem by walking straight up to her and saying, matter-of-factly, "Your room still has your stuff in it." I didn't touch anything. Her mother held her and cried. June stood in the kitchen doorway and watched, and I stood behind her, and she leaned back against my shoulder without turning around. "One chapter at a time," she said quietly. "One chapter at a time," I agreed. That spring, we got a dog. Maisie named him Sage. A year after that November night, June and I were married in the backyard. 30 people. Fairy lights in the old oak tree. A table I had built for the occasion that everyone sat around afterward telling stories. Maisie was the flower girl. She distributed petals with the measured precision of a 7-year-old who had decided this was the most important assignment of her life and intended to execute it accordingly. June's father cried. He didn't expect to. I saw him turn away and think no one noticed. That evening, after the guests had gone and Maisie had fallen asleep on the couch, we sat on the back porch in the warm dark. June turned her ring slowly in the light from the kitchen window. "I've been thinking about that first night," she said. "About what I was asking you." "What about it?" "I was asking you to pretend." She looked at the ring, "And you turned it into something else entirely without telling me." "You said you needed someone to sign as your husband," I said. "I took that literally." She smiled. The kind that changed her whole face. You're the only man I know who could make that argument with a straight face. It's a good argument. She leaned against my shoulder. The oak tree moved in the warm air, and the neighborhood was quiet, and the dog was asleep somewhere inside, and everything that had started with a knock on a door and a folder of paperwork had become this. Something whole, and real, and chosen. Some people find the life they planned. Some people find the one they didn't know to want until a woman knocked on their door on a cold November evening and asked them a question they had no business answering, and they answered it anyway. Mine started with a yes. And I've been meaning it ever since,